Bucky Irving looks like the running back one for the Buccaneers. You've got Rashee Rice probably out for the season now, and then you've got Breece and Bijan laying complete eggs today. There's a lot to talk about, and a lot of it is not good. Let's start with something that's good, and that's Mike Evans got a touchdown today. Woo! And we've seen that in the games that Mike Evans has a touchdown, he's typically pretty fantasy productive, right? That's true of anybody, but it's especially true of the most dominant X receiver in the league. 19.5 points and a touchdown against Philly today. Chris Godwin, on the other hand, had an average day. He had about 10 points. But both of these guys, it's good to see them be productive. It's good to see Baker in that offense be productive because it could be one of the better teams for fantasy football. And on that note, it looks like Bucky Irving might be the running back one there.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as saying the running back one. I would say it is definitely looking like a true committee, though, because you've got both of them splitting opportunities now, 10 carries apiece in this game. Obviously, Rachaad White was sick going into this game. He had like food poisoning or some sort of illness or whatever, but I'm not really going to use that as an excuse when Bucky Irving has just been more efficient. Now, it is ironic that both of them average 4.9 yards per carry. Rachaad White still getting a majority of the receiving usage there, and when you're looking at the goal line carries and the opportunities in the red zone, it is a 50-50 split, so you're definitely concerned about Rachaad White and his upside. I think it's a lot less than it was last year, but Bucky Irving is now looking like a flexible option for sure. A bell cow, wouldn't go that far, but I mean, you've got to be excited if you invested in Bucky Irving off waivers last week.
Breece Hall owners are in shambles right now because Breece did absolutely nothing today. He had 3 points, 10 carries for 4 yards. Yes, 4. 2 receptions for 14 yards. When you're looking at the usage, you're not really concerned about that. People might say, okay, maybe it's because of Braylon Allen. Still out snapping. Braylon Allen 51 to 27. Still running twice the routes. Still getting twice the targets at least, and getting still, 10 to 8 carries. That's closer, but again, Breece is still getting the valuable touches. That game was a rock fight. It was ugly. I don't expect Breece to be this bad moving forward. I don't think you should panic on Breece, but more to come on that.
Yeah, Justin Fields absolutely tears up the Colts defense. Who would have thought this would have happened? Who would have ranked Justin Fields as a top 12 quarterback this week? Yours truly, us truly, because we knew that Justin Fields was going to go off. He has 2 rushing touchdowns. He looks, absolutely amazing. He actually looked kind of average at best as a quarterback, but from a fantasy perspective, I mean, you've got to be excited if you got him off of waivers in the last couple weeks as well. I will say, temper your expectations a little bit with Fields in future matchups where he's playing actual competent defenses.
Lo and behold, as soon as Anthony Richardson leaves the field for the Colts, all of a sudden they have productive fantasy wide receivers. Who would have thought? Josh Downs comes onto the scene, and look, you'll remember, I was a big fan of Josh Downs coming into the season. I drafted a lot of Josh Downs because I figured this was the Josh Downs we'd see. I figured we'd see a slightly better or even just a little bit better Anthony Richardson. I was wrong. But Flacco comes in. He has 8 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Downs looks like a different player. He's somebody you'd start in fantasy. Michael Pittman as well. 6 of 9 receptions. Nice. And 113 yards for Michael Pittman. Again, this was not the week to sit Michael Pittman. You start him until he goes off. You start him until he finally produces. So you don't do what Nathan did and put him on your bench. But both of those guys, again, if Flacco continues to start for the Colts, obviously you're going to have a lot better outlook for these guys. I don't think it's likely. I think you're going to see Anthony Richardson come back. And again, Pittman is going to move way down our rankings, and Downs won't be startable probably.
Yeah, Nico Collins goes nuclear today. 150 yards, a touchdown, 12 receptions, 15 targets. Yeah, Tank Dell wasn't playing. It doesn't matter. Nico Collins at this point, it is just incredibly ironic that Nico Collins is going to end up being a top 6 wide receiver easily, maybe top 3 to 4. And Stephon Diggs is producing as well. This is awesome for everyone who invested in Nico Collins at price. He's looking like one of the steals of the draft. I think, I mean, until he proves otherwise, I know he struggled with the hamstring injury coming into the game. He was pretty questionable, ended up playing, and then he does this. Yeah. Like, barring injury, this guy is a top 6 wide receiver every single week.
One guy we are at least encouraged about in the Jags offense, Jags look awful. Jags still haven't won a game, but Brian Thomas looks good. And he had 6 receptions today for 86 yards and a touchdown, which is great. It equated to 19 fantasy points in half PPR leagues. You love to see this as a Brian Thomas owner. Obviously, he's looked like one of the better rookies so far this year in the NFL. Games of 12, 10, 7, and 18 points so far. So again, because even though the Jacksonville Jaguars don't look good, Travis Etienne didn't do anything. Tank Bigsby outscored him today. Trevor Lawrence doesn't look any good. It does look like Brian Thomas could be productive for your fantasy teams. He becomes a really solid flex option for your teams from this point forward.
Jordan Addison is really interesting as a wide receiver, too, for the Minnesota Vikings. I think being drafted in the preseason a lot lower than he should have been because Sam Darnold is actually able to produce a lot of productive assets in that offense. He had 2 touchdowns today, 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. And I think this kind of begs the question at this point, Is Jordan Addison as a wide receiver too expected to get 8 to 12 touchdowns in a season because he is playing with Justin Jefferson, who commands so much defensive attention? I think at this point, he's definitely on pace to, and I think he's going to continue to get some red zone usage consistently for the rest of the season because, again, of all the attention that Justin Jefferson commands. So I, for one, am really excited that Addison is back. It just makes that offense so much more dynamic, a lot less predictable, and a lot more production upside for every single asset in that offense, including Aaron Jones.
So we've seen 2 games now with Jayden Reed where he's played with Jordan Love. And you'll notice that he is a lot better when he plays with Jordan Love. A lot of people might say, okay, he had the garbage time touchdown, which is true, or not garbage time touchdown, garbage time, really long pass, but still 23.5 points today, 8 targets, 7 receptions for 139 yards, and he did have a touchdown today, and that was in a part of the game that actually mattered. Jayden Reed is significantly better with Jordan Love on the field. You go 31 points and then 24 points with him, and then without him, 5 points and 9 points. We're going to hope Jordan Love stays healthy. Jordan Love actually looked decent today. Obviously, you can still tell he's getting back from injury, but it does wonders for Jayden Reed. It also does wonders for Dontayvion Wicks, who had a big game today. Now, this one I will say is probably going to be a little bit more fluky, although Dontayvion Wicks had 13 targets today, which that's significant. So that's the part if you want to look at Dontayvion Wicks, because really, I mean, if you're talking about without the touchdowns, right? He would have scored 2.5 points from his receptions in half PPR leagues and then 8 points, right? So you're talking about like an 11-point game here. The touchdowns obviously boosted his production today by a lot. But again, we're not going to count that against him. We're not going to say, it doesn't matter at all. We don't think that Wicks is going to do this long term. You've got 3 targets, 4 targets, 2 targets.
You know what does make him more interesting?
What?
Christian Watson going down.
That does make, that's very true. We should probably move him up our waiver. So Dontayvion Wicks could be interesting moving forward, and maybe that's why he got the targets today, because you had Christian Watson go down. Yep,
and DeAndre Swift might actually be good now, all of a sudden. Maybe not. I'm leaning not, but look, DeAndre Swift has 7 receptions for 72 yards, 16 carries, 93 yards, and a touchdown. Roschon Johnson gets the goal line carry. Lo and behold, DeAndre Swift has a 26-point game. To me, this is classic DeAndre Swift. We have seen this before, the first 4 or 5 years of his career. He has these types of games, and I think this was one of those against the Rams, who just have so many injuries, and obviously their defense is a shell of what it used to be with Aaron Donald. So I would kind of pump the brakes a little bit with DeAndre Swift. Let's see multiple weeks of this before we go absolutely bananas and say that this is his breakout game with the Chicago Bears. Though I am happy to see him get this production, because I was a big Swift truther coming into the season. I'm not getting ahead of myself here.
On the other hand, the receivers had a little bit of a hard time producing today. Even DJ Moore, who had a touchdown, only had 3 receptions for 22 yards. And so none of these guys in half PPR leagues got above 10 points. And I think this is concerning. I also think it's something that you should keep an eye on for the rest of the season. This is a Rams defense that has allowed quite a bit of points to wide receivers this year in fantasy football. And Caleb Williams throwing the ball 23 times today compared to last week's 50-plus times, which we said wouldn't happen again, wasn't super effective. He had a high completion percentage, but again, only threw for 157 yards and 1 touchdown. And that's really not going to cut it when you have 3 mouths to feed there. So you've got DJ Moore getting 6 targets, Keenan Allen getting 3 targets, and Rome Odunze getting 3 targets. You'll notice we mentioned Rome Odunze last week as a sell, and this is really why, because we knew the volume was going to go down, and there are too many mouths to feed with Moore and Keenan Allen there. It could make Rome Odunze a good buy low here in a couple of weeks when you expect him to kind of emerge into that wide receiver 1B role potentially. But for now, it's going to be hard for all of these guys to produce in that offense.
I mean, it was just a week ago, less than a week ago technically, that we were talking about Chase Brown being a cut candidate. He's not relevant. Zach Moss has 20 points against Washington. And then you see literally a 50-50 split between Chase Brown and Zach Moss in the Bugles backfield, and both of them look like viable flex options. Someone please tell us what running back we should be investing in and what running back we should be putting our trust in for the rest of the season. I'm still going to stand with Zach Moss, but Chase Brown, dude, he had 3 receptions or 2 receptions, a little bit of receiving upside there. Zach Moss had the upper hand with 4. Chase Brown had 2 touchdowns. Zach Moss only like 5 to 7 points behind him with 1 less touchdown. He still had a touchdown, though they combined for 3 total. I think with the usage, with the goal line carries being a concern, with Chase Brown taking some away from Zach Moss, that kind of just caps Zach Moss's ceiling. With Chase Brown getting that usage, makes both of them kind of a not so exciting option rest of season. To me, this is like a better offense compared to Tampa Bay, but it's like a Bucky Irving, Rachaad White situation that we're looking at with more volume to go around, because clearly Cincinnati likes to run the ball quite a bit more than Tampa does.
On the other side of that game, you had Chuba Hubbard with his second in a row 20-point game, right? 18 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown today. And Chuba, this means a couple things here. He also had 4 receptions for 17 yards. Number one, Chuba is now flexible, at least while Andy Dalton's out there, even in a losing effort against the Cincinnati Bengals. they look a lot better offensively. They look a lot more competent. You've got Chuba with 20. You've got Diontae Johnson with 17 and Xavier Legette with 16, right? And so the offense as a whole might actually be fantasy relevant now. And with that being said, the other thing that I think you could take away from this is that when Jonathan Brooks does come back, which I still think we are a few weeks away from, could they keep Chuba Hubbard in that rotation and run a heavy committee? Which on a bad offense like this, or a, it's not as bad as it was, but on a poor offense, it is going to be a bad situation if we do have those guys splitting carries. It would definitely cap Brooks' upside when he does come back. But again, what are the odds maybe that they see what Chuba's doing and they're like, you know what, we'll ease Brooks back in. We may not even give him that much run this year. So it could mean a lot for his return. But Chuba actually has looked pretty good in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, Xavier Legette has as well. He had a good game today, obviously in a loss, same team, with Diontae Johnson producing as well. Look, I think with Xavier Legette, he's looking like a guy that you probably want to invest in if you can get off waivers, because he had 10 targets, 6 receptions today, was able to haul in a touchdown, decent yardage as well. Look, Diontae Johnson's going to be the more consistent guy that you trust. This is like a diet Chris Godwin, Mike Evans sort of interaction, right? You've got the Dave Canales history in Tampa Bay. They go and they draft Xavier Legette as that big guy who can be a vertical threat on the outside and win those contested catches, very Mike Evans-esque, and Diontae Johnson, who's the possession wide receiver. Look, these guys can feed off of each other really well, I think. And with Andy Dalton for 2 straight weeks now providing a ton of passing volume, like 40 pass attempts a week so far, I think you're looking at both of these guys being flexible.
Kamara continues his dominance, 21 points again today.
Even with Taysom Hill.
Even with Taysom Hill taking 2 touchdowns and then getting hurt.
Gosh.
And I was, of course, playing Kamara in the Flock League. I also played Mike Evans. I also played Zach Moss. Also played Chuba. Also played CJ Stroud. So I had a really good day. And then Olave and Shaheed both showed up. The interesting thing about this, I don't know if you saw this, but Shaheed actually had like 11 targets today.
Good. Nice.
Which is really surprising.
Wow.
11 targets, 8 receptions for 83 yards. He didn't really get that deep ball, didn't really get that touchdown, and he had 11 points in half PPR leagues. I mean, that's an interesting development. Olave obviously having almost 13 points in PPR leagues, 8 of 10 receptions for 87 yards. But those guys pretty much running the same amount of routes, getting the same amount of targets is interesting, especially with Rashid Shaheed and what we've seen and how he's produced so far this year. That could be interesting. We shall monitor that the rest of the year.
Hear me out.
Okay.
It is officially time to freak out about Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. Everyone panic. I'm tired of this. Bijan Robinson being drafted in the first round has gotten you a grand total of 13, 14, 12, and 9 points first 4 weeks of the season. Yes, that's a nice high floor. Only 7 carries today, and now we're looking at the Tyler Algier-Bijan split again. Algier out-carried him today. Out-carried him. Bijan's talent is undeniable. This is fantasy mid. This is high floor fantasy mid. He has not demonstrated in his career yet that he can have this blow your socks off ceiling, right? He's not Alvin Kamara. He's not Saquon Barkley. He's not doing what those guys are doing right now. And he's costing you leagues. Like at this point, I don't know what to do with him. I'm just stating this is something that we want to continue to monitor and kind of panic and freak out about, because if you've got someone who's trying to like maybe buy Bijan low or is interested in overpaying for him, right? Like the Falcons offense doesn't even look that good right now. Everyone that we thought had a high ceiling isn't doing much at the moment. So something to monitor. Kyle Pitts, 3 targets, 0 points. Goose egg.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I am with Kyle Pitts, he might be dust, but whatever.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that in some other videos this week. Ceedee Lamb had a good night on Thursday. He had 20 points, 8 targets, 7 receptions, 98 yards, and did have a touchdown as well. And then you see Malik Nabers obviously continue his dominance as well. Dominance. I say dominance. He had 15 targets again, 18, 12, and 15 targets in his last 3
He
games.
looks like one of the best wide receivers in the league.
Hey,
automatically.
Avery victory lap here. Remember when we were talking about Garrett Wilson versus Malik Nabers?
Oh, yeah, I know.
12 receptions, 115 yards, no touchdowns, still had 17 points in half PPR leagues. You'll love it even more in PPR leagues. He looks like one of the best, if not the best picks in fantasy football. It's always a rookie wide receiver, man. It's always a rookie wide receiver. Malik Nabers, man.
Every single time.
Everyone.
Jayden Daniels has another great day, and Brian Robinson reaps the benefits as well, along with Jeremy McNichols.
Who we told you was going to go off.
We knew that was going to happen. I mean, number 1 waiver pickup this week.
I definitely heard his name before.
Brian Robinson is the number 1 guy there. He gets 21 carries. He has 100 yards, gets a touchdown, even gets some receiving usage as well. He's got a very high floor just with the way that they utilize him in that offense, and the rushing upside of Jayden Daniels isn't really taking away from him that much. So very pleasant surprise with B-Rob this year. And Jayden Daniels just continuing to look better and better every single week as a rookie quarterback.
One interesting development today was that Carson Steele actually lost his job. You saw him first or second play of the game, I think, or his first or second carry of the game, he fumbled the ball, and then he never really came back in. And so this backfield all of a sudden gets very interesting. You have Kareem Hunt with 14 carries today, and then you have Samaje Perine who had 5 carries today. So it looks like Hunt might actually be the guy there. And we're going to monitor that with our waivers and our buys and sells this week, but that one's going to be one to watch, as well as Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce both getting their own with Rashee Rice out. This is going to be a huge storyline because Rashee Rice, right now as we're recording this, it's a feared that he torn his ACL, meaning he probably did tore his ACL. I'm sure by the time you're watching this, you've got the news. And both of them did pretty good today. And Worthy, he had 15 points and a touchdown today. And again, you see him get the touchdown, and you notice it was the big play in the touchdown. However, with Xavier Worthy, and I will point this out, the main thing I'm worried about with him is going to be the volume. And when you're looking at today, he still had 4 targets, the same amount of targets he sat in the first 3 games. So it was, again, he had the big play. Travis Kelce, on the other hand, was actually he wasn't getting ignored, which is nice. He had 9 targets today, his highest mark of the season, 7 receptions, his highest mark of the season, 89 yards, his highest mark of the season, and still didn't have a touchdown, still had in half PPR leagues 12.5 points.
That's good old Kelce.
You're going to see Kelce get a huge bump if Rashee Rice is not on the field. I'll say that right now.
Yep.
Last guy.
Yeah. Lab McConkey, he gets a touchdown against Kansas City, the lone touchdown for an offense in LA that just looks pretty gross, honestly. Justin Herbert banged up with the ankle, obviously, but with Ladd, I think he's going to be a lot less touchdown dependent, even though he did, a lot of his production came from that touchdown. I think as over the course of the season, QJ is going to be that more touchdown dependent guy, big play ability, and then Lab McConkey going to be your more possession wide receiver. It was nice to see him have this week after he had 2 slow weeks before that. Continue to follow Lab McConkey, see if you can get him at a discount, because I do think he's Herbert's number 1 option.
All right, let's jump over now to our rookie report. We'll do the top 5 rookie performers this week. Obviously, number 1 making it on this list again is Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels continues to look like one of the best picks in fantasy football this year. If you drafted him, you went no quarterback drafting Jayden Daniels, I don't know, like most of my teams feel pretty freaking good about it. I love Jayden Daniels. Now, if the rest of my players could perform. Brian Thomas Jr., again, had a pretty big day. In half PPR leagues, he was the 2nd highest scoring rookie of the day, and again, looks fairly good in a Jags offense we're not super optimistic about, to say the least. Malik Nabers, again, looks like one of the best picks in fantasy football. He continues to be on a tear. He's going to make it on this list probably every freaking week. Xavier Legette is a newcomer here, and this is a good one because he had the target volume. We're going to talk more about him in our waiver section, but Legette looked good. Andy Dalton brings a whole new dynamic to that offense, and then Ladd McConkey. And McConkey, again, you saw him get a touchdown today, and this is really what we've seen. In the games he scored touchdowns, he scored in double figures. In the games where he hasn't scored touchdowns, he's not scored in double figures. Had 7 targets today, which is what he had in week 1. He had 6 in week 3, so more of the same there. He did have his highest yardage mark of the season. You saw him get some yak today on a couple of those throws. He had 67 yards, and so encouraged by that. With that being said, I think with Ladd, you have to temper your expectations a little bit. The offensive line there looks still really bad. I mean, Herbert is getting annihilated there. Granted, they played the Chiefs, but they've got issues all over the place. So Ladd, while I am encouraged by this performance, you still should be a little bit cautious. Those are our top 5 rookie performers of the week, though.
A lot of injuries this week. They just keep on piling up. This was another brutal one after, not too bad of an injury report last week, but this week, AR goes down with a potential hip pointer. They do say that he says that he's feeling sore. He feels good. He actually wanted to come back in and play, and Steichen was like, nah, you kind of suck, and Joe Flacco's just going to sling it and win us the game, and he did. AR says he's going to be good. I think he's going to be good, just a little soreness. And then Jonathan Taylor does miss the end of the game with an ankle injury. That's something that we're going to want to monitor this entire week. Trey Sermon being a potential waiver pickup as well. He did say that he's feeling pretty good, excited to attack the week because it's going to be another tough one. So JT does miss the end of that game as well, which I'm a little more concerned about. That ankle injury. That's something that's going to linger, right? Even if he does play next week, I'm just worried about how he's going to do for the rest of the season, if that's going to come back. He's had ankle injuries in the past. If I can talk, you understand what I'm saying. He does say he's feeling pretty good, excited to attack this week because it's going to be another tough one, end quote. Trey Sermon is going to be a potential waiver pickup. Rashee Rice carted off to the locker room with a knee injury. Sucks. Everyone cry at the same time. It's horrible. It's honestly devastating. Christian Watson, less devastating. I'm sorry, Christian Watson. You're not as fantasy relevant. He's out with an ankle injury, and definitely we'll see how that develops. Cordarelle Patterson out with an ankle injury. Arthur Smith adores the guy. And now he can't use him because he's out with an ankle injury. Taysom Hill can't vulture any more touchdowns because he is out as well with a rib injury. I would assume that keeps him off the field for another couple weeks. So just more touchdowns to go around for the rest of the players in the Saints offense.
Jumping to our waiver section of the video now. I'll start at number 9 and work our way to number 1. We're going to have Justin Fields here, 2 to 5% of your waiver budget this week. And again, the priority here can move up if you really need a quarterback. If quarterbacks are more competitive in your league, he could go as high as 2 or 3 here. And obviously the fab, if you really need a quarterback, if quarterbacks are not on waivers, if they're hard to come by in your league, you might spend more than this. But Fields, again, 31 points. Looks like he might be the starter there. He might stay the starter. Is Russ ever going to start? I don't know, but it looks like Fields is the guy. If Fields is starting, he obviously has his upside, and it's definitely good to get that upside on your fantasy football roster.
Trey Sermon's going to be our 8th priority here. Again, with running backs dropping like flies right now, you just kind of want to get some insurance. And with Trey Sermon, you've seen him be productive and get some usage when JT is off the field, like the end of last season. So again, not going to spend a bunch of my budget on Trey Sermon because he really is just going to be on the field if JT's out. And I'm not betting on that long term for JT being banged up all season.
At 7, we're going to have Josh Downs here. Josh Downs rostered in 29% of sleeper leagues right now. We're going to say 5 to 10%. I think you'd be cautious with this one. The reason we have him pretty low is because I think they bring Anthony Richardson back, and as soon as they do, I don't think Josh Downs is going to be startable for your fantasy team. Pick him up as good depth. You obviously know what he's capable of. You know, he as a talent, as a player, he's great. In terms of for fantasy football, I think this could be a little bit of a trap. Because, again, Anthony Richardson probably can't support his production.
Dontayvion Wicks is going to be our 6th priority here. Obviously, he is, at best, second to Jayden Reed. At worst, 3rd. It depends on how long Christian Watson is out as well. So we're going to monitor Christian Watson's injury, see how long he's actually out, if he's even out for a long period of time. Wicks, at the end of the day, one of those touchdowns was in like garbage time when they were able to push the ball down the field at the end of the game. The other one, I didn't really see that one as much, but Jayden Reed is the number 1 guy there, and it seems like everyone else's ceiling is capped in that offense.
At number 5 here, we are going to go with Chase Brown. And Chase Brown, again, I think with Wicks, depending on what your team need is, Wicks could be as high as 3 or 2 or 3 for you. We're going to put the running backs higher because I feel like running back as a whole is uglier than wide receiver right now. And so Chase Brown rostered in 56% of sleeper leagues, so he's available in about half of your leagues, 10 to 15% of your waiver budget. They proved today that he can be productive. I would be a little bit cautious with this one as well. This could be fool's gold because you're not going to see both of these guys come out and produce like this every week. They were playing the Panthers. That's why this happened. But he is a guy, if you need running back depth and he's on your waivers, you should definitely go get. So
yeah, Wandale Robinson has been quietly productive and had a nice little floor since starting this season alongside Malik Nabers. And Nabers has really, again, he's just such a good dominant wide receiver that he kind of takes a lot of focus away from the rest of the weapons in that offense. And there's not many weapons in that offense. Wandale Robinson is one of the few that is actually a viable weapon for Daniel Jones, for Brian Daboll as a play caller. And he got 14 targets this last game against the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday night. And I mean, I looked at his other targets and he's had 12, 4, 8, and 14 targets first 4 weeks of the season. 8, 9 and 12 points in half PPR format. So look, if he can get a touchdown, if he can get a little more yak with that opportunity, I mean, again, very high floor guy. It's looking like. So I'm kind of interested to see what Wandale's able to do in future weeks.
Bucky Irving, again, this could be as high as 2 or 3, but he's going to be number 3 here, rostered in 62% of leagues, 10 to 15% of your waiver budget. He's going to be a really good option. He looks like the running back 1. Again, we're a little bit skeptical on the running back 1 label. If you really believe it, you could probably go drop up to 20%. I don't think I would go more than that for Bucky Irving because I do think his ceiling is a little bit capped there with Rachaad White in the offense, even if he does overtake him for the running back 1 role. But Bucky looks like somebody that if you need running back depth in a landscape right now where running back, it is bad. It's really bad. You can go get him. Problem is, he's not really available, so that also kind of factors into our priority because he's probably not going to be available in your leagues.
Yeah, Carson Steele kind of took the starting running back job away from himself, fumbling very early in this game, and he didn't even see the field the rest of the game. Kareem Hunt looks like the guy. He had 14 carries. Samaje Perine had 5 carries, was able to get the touchdown, so that was a little bit. You don't be fooled by that touchdown. Kareem Hunt was getting a majority of the workload, and I think you're going to see that continue for the rest of the season as long as Kareem Hunt stays healthy because he's got pre-established experience there in Kansas City, and he's shown that he can take on that type of workload and be pretty effective in a really good offense. So he's going to be our 2nd priority.
And our number 1 priority here is going to be Xavier Legette. Legette had 10 targets today on 6 receptions. There's plenty of opportunity here. The quarterback situation is much better, and the Carolina Panthers situation as a whole is much better. And so with Legette, I think he is the guy with the highest upside on waivers right now. And again, I think if you really need running back, you're obviously going to prioritize guys like Bucky Irving, guys like Kareem Hunt over Xavier Legette. But Really encouraged by what we saw today, and honestly, we're willing to drop a fair amount of our waiver budget on him. We will say 10 to 15%. You probably have to maybe go 15 to 20. I don't go more than that, but I do think Xavier Legette is somebody that could really be on the verge of breaking out as a rookie, and those guys are league winners a lot of times.
Yeah, all of a sudden, plenty of volume to go around.
Yeah.
Who would have
thought?
then
3 quick buys for you real quick. I'll start with the first one here. Courtland Sutton's going to be the first one, and the reason for this is I'm chasing targets, right? Courtland Sutton has been largely unproductive, right? And you saw Bo Nix throw for 60 yards today, and ironically enough, Courtland Sutton had 60 yards today. Obviously, that's not good enough, but this was a rock fight. It was against a really, really good Jets defense. You did have Sauce on Courtland Sutton, and Sutton still managed to get a touchdown and have 13.5 points in half PPR leagues. And so you're encouraged by that. But looking at the targets over the first 4 games of the season, 12 targets, 4 targets, 11 targets, and 9 targets. If you need somebody flexible, my guess is as the year goes on, Bo Nix is going to get better as a passer. He's going to continue to target Sutton as the wide receiver 1 there. And as Sutton continues to go, you're going to see him haul in more of these passes, get more yards, and then occasionally, like you saw today, get the touchdown and have a 14-point game. You could probably get him for almost nothing. So I would definitely go see what you can get Courtland Sutton. Send some feelers for Courtland Sutton at least.
I'd also be going and getting David Montgomery as well. And this guy might be a little tougher to get, but I will say that the discount is basically going to be baked into his price because he's in a committee with Jahmyr Gibbs. And that is a significant knock in theory. But what a lot of people don't know is in the first 3 weeks of the season, David Montgomery's outproduced Jahmyr Gibbs. We're going through this again. And the first 3 games of the season, David Montgomery has gotten a touchdown, and a touchdown. So look, to me, this is a very easy buy if you need a safe running back that you can rely on week in and week out to have a pretty high floor where even if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's getting 17, 11, 23 carries, right? And he's a pretty good running back in that system. Ben Johnson's a great OC. I'd trust him to continue to get Monty the ball.
And then the last one here is going to be Drake London. Again, I'm chasing targets. His targets have gone up every single game this season. 3 targets, 7 targets, 9 targets, and then 12 targets today against the New Orleans Saints. He only had 9.5 points because he only brought in 6 of those targets for 64 yards and didn't have a touchdown. But you see Kirk Cousins relying on Drake London more, and that's the main thing. And so when I'm looking for my buys, especially at wide receiver, I want to chase the volume. So do us a huge favor. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed. If you haven't, get a team blueprint at flockfantasy.com/domain. We'll review your team and help you try to win your league if you're in trouble. But appreciate you guys. We'll see you with the buys video here tomorrow.